Trucks. We see them everywhere. They flood our highways and populate mall parking lots. But this wasn't the case 60 years ago. Trucks were loud, uncomfortable, and only really used for utilitarian jobs. So, what happened? An unlikely foe to the traditional American truck would take center stage: the Japanese light duty pickup, or the mini truck. Today, however, we only look into one of these, one that goes unheard of but still deserves its place in mini truck history: the Datsun Nissan 720. Datsun came to the US in 1958. However, no one really noticed them at that point. It wouldn't be until the mid to late 60s, with the introduction of the Datsun Roadster and a little bit later the Datsun 510, that they would begin picking up popularity. Also popular at this time was Datsun's 520 pickup, a very rudimentary but small and humble truck. This truck would undergo a facelift in 1969 to the 521 generation. However, these trucks still lacked the popularity that Datsun needed to sell trucks. Luckily, there would be a crisis that would be perfectly timed for Nissan to pick up that popularity, also known as the 1973 oil crisis. This would be perfect timing, as in 1973, Datsun would unveil their new 620 generation of pickup. These trucks were wildly popular in the 1970s as they were good on fuel, still delivered truck necessities. They also sparked a custom mini truck scene as well, with custom paint and flashy wheels, as well as a number of other modifications, very similar to that of the custom van culture at the time. These trucks brought a lot of new features, such as a long bed in 1975, a 5-speed manual in 1977, and one of the first extended cabs also in 1977. The King Cab, which is the name for the extended cab, is the first light duty extended cab to be introduced to the US, and only the third extended cab in the US, only being beat by Dodge in 1973 and Ford in 1975. The only new feature that these trucks did not have was that of four-wheel drive. Only a few other mini trucks at the time had four-wheel drive, all of them coming out in 1978. These trucks include the Toyota Hilux, the Chevy Love, and the Mitsubishi Mighty Max or Dodge D50. However, this did not stop 620 owners from making their own four-wheel drives, where they would take solid axles and transfer cases from other trucks. Datsun took the 4x4 craze into consideration when developing their new pickup. In 1980, the US would get this brand new Datsun 720 pickup. The truck would carry over the 2-liter L20B and 5-speed manual from the 620 pickup. However, you could now get this pickup with factory 4x4. Nissan had a 4x4 already in the US, sold as the Nissan Patrol, which was a direct competitor to the Toyota Land Cruiser. However, for whatever reason, they sold it as a Nissan, unlike the rest of their models being sold as Datsuns in the US. This led to a lack of popularity in the US and very low sale numbers. The new Datsun four-wheel drive system would be different though from the Patrol, and different from a lot of pickups at the time, using independent front suspension. Most full-size pickups and Toyota pickups at the time had used solid front axles, which lead to a very jarring ride. They may be very good off-road, however. On the streets getting to the trails, they would drive like absolute tractors. Datsun created this independent front suspension in a very interesting way, using the rear differential from a Z car and turning it around to be used in the front of the pickup. Most four-wheel drive pickup trucks have an offset front differential and an extension to make the front axle shafts the same length on either side. Datsun, however, did not do this, making the Z-car diff nearly centered and having a slightly unequal length axle shaft per side. The new four-wheel drive pickups had a comfortable ride while still being wildly capable off-road. The truck would also, at its release, initially carry over the trim levels from the 620 as well, such as the Standard, Long Bed, and the Little Hustler. In 1981, Datsun would release the Nap Z engine in the pickups, which was a nickname for all of Nissan's emission engines that had been started a few years earlier. These trucks had twin spark plugs per cylinder, as well as a number of other emissions control units. In the 720, you were able to get the Z22 for the first year in 1981 in the US. Also, starting in 1981, Datsun would have an option for a four-cylinder diesel sold under the SD engine code. In 1983, the Datsun trucks would undergo a facelift with a new, larger grille, double wall bed with new taillights and design, as well as upgraded rear axle, a new restyled dashboard, updated single cab, as well as upgraded front suspension for the four-wheel drive. The front suspension was now much stronger, being triangulated, unlike the previous year of four-wheel drive truck. This year, the pickup would also receive the now larger Z24 engine. Halfway through 1983, the Tennessee plant would be built for Nissan production, where a lot of these pickups would be built. In addition, new trim levels would be added, such as the Standard, GL, the Deluxe, DX, and the Sport Truck, ST. The Sport Truck and Deluxe had slightly different interiors with upgraded bucket seats and an upgraded stereo system, but nothing in the way of performance, really. In 1985, there would be another facelift with a revised bed, this time getting rid of the outside bedside tie-downs and having a smooth-sided bed with new taillights as well. Also now, these trucks were fully branded as Nissans and not Datsun Nissans. For 1986, this would be the last year for the 720 and only a half year at that. Notably for this year, only the sport truck trim could be optioned with the new throttle body fuel-injected Z24i. Also in 1986, Toyota would finally release an independent front suspension 4x4, meaning that Datsun would have this market all to themselves for 5 whole years before their main competitor would release something similar. Halfway through 1986, Nissan would release the D21 hardbody, a new truck carrying over a lot of the features from the 720, such as the Z24i and four-wheel drive system. A new feature for the D21, which the 720 never got, would be a more powerful V6. However, the 720 would not be done. Countries such as Mexico would continue producing the 720 until 92 with a updated fascia, similar to that of the D21. These trucks, like the 620s, were a staple of customization, basically being seen as the blocky, square mini truck, lowered, raised. However, there was even a fiberglass camper shell company that made a SUV version of these trucks called the Bushmaster. These trucks looked very similar to the Toyota Trekkers as well. Datsuns have been seen at off-road races as early as 1967. However, these consisted of mainly privateer racers. In 1967, a race now known as the Baja 1000 started. At the time, it was known as the Mexican 1000. Not wanting to miss out, Barak Racing Enterprises, BRE, entered a completely stock 520 pickup, placing fourth in a new class. This new class was Class 7, designated to small and medium utility vehicles, mainly mini trucks. The class would pick up popularity with more teams entering throughout the 70s. When the Datsun 720 came out, there was not a fully factory-supported team. However, there were a few builders, notably Jim Connor and Spencer Lowe. A couple years into the 720's production, Nissan would finally have a branded and sponsored truck, choosing Sherman Bach as the driver. Eventually, Nissan would also invite Roger Mears to drive, who would later become Nissan's face in the off-road racing world. By the end of the 720's run, Nissan had established its place in off-road racing. creating sponsorships with companies such as Fox Factory, who had only just entered the four-wheel off-roading scene a few years prior. They had mainly been known in the MX arena with their forks and their shocks for motocross bikes. Nissan also had even hosted their own events, such as the Nissan Celebrity Cup, where drivers such as Chuck Norris and other famous celebrities drove lightly modified 4x4 720s. Eventually, though, Nissan would have to retire the 720 and replace it with the new D21 hardbody. With the knowledge from the 720, Nissan would continue to succeed, building even wilder trucks and taking home more trophies. In 1988, Nissan even came out with a special edition called the Desert Runner to commemorate their success. While shadowed by the 620 and the D21, the 720 still holds its place in mini truck history. It served as a transition vehicle, bringing new technology as well as improving existing technology. It allowed Nissan to gain 19 off-road racing championship trophies between 1982 and 1992. Without the 720, trucks like the Toyota Tacoma, Chevy Colorado, or even the Nissan Frontier may not have been as popular today. These modern trucks still share a lot of features of the 720, such as independent front suspension, four-wheel drive, automatic locking hubs, extended cab, and luxury trims, all within a smaller truck package. And while trucks may be getting larger and seeing more time on the streets and highways, there still remains a group who works and plays with their trucks as they were initially designed to do more than 60 years ago.
Took crops to Joplin, through the pass, got there and back on a gallon of gas. Drove to the mountains to hunt and fish, took all our gear and our hound dog, Tish. Overhead cam and 4-speed stick, hauling these plants ain't no trick. Me and my Datsun don't waste no time, just keep on moving on down the line. Datsun Little Hustler, America's #1 selling small truck.